sense as I see Isaac. There's Fields Isaac, who is we're descended from Isaac and William, but not a John. So maybe he died.
Well, John is, which one do you have?
This is the 1850 U.S.
Yeah, John, I think, I don't know why he's not on there, because later on, the dad is living, Henry is living with them.
Right.
With him. So,
That's right.
Yeah, so I'm not sure.
My question is that Earthman comes from the German church, Erdmann. Earthman.
Okay.
So my question is, what part of Germany did they come from?
Well, they did not come here directly from Germany. I'll tell you that. A lot of people
that did not come from Germany.
They didn't come directly here from Germany. Actually,
that's a German name.
No, but it's like me. I have a German maiden name, but I wasn't born in Germany. It's like it was generations before. Because that tells you actually one of the places, and that's another thing on Henry. There's several different places listed as his place of birth, even on census records. North Carolina is one of the guesses. But he wasn't, Henry, the dad that came here, was not born in Germany. He may have been of German descent, but he wasn't born in Germany.
Right. We don't know the answer. We really don't know when they changed the name from Erdmann.
It was early on.
We just don't know. But we're still looking. We're gonna find
still
it.
looking. Eventually, you'll find it.
That's right.
A little side note, Charlie, he discovered a list of men who volunteered in Austin in November of 1840.
Yes.
Well, that's in this book. You're probably gonna get it.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was a coincidence.
No, I don't either. And it was John H. Ward leading it too.
What they did, they went up and found the Comanches and annihilated. Even though the Comanches were not the tribe that killed his son. But that was, and we never ever had any more problems with the Comanches. We went back to Arizona.
Yeah, the Henry the father was in on that, and that was that fall, which was another reason I thought it was 1840, not any other.
And that's
day.
described in this book. So this book talks about this. 1840 was the year where the Comanches. There was a lot of conflict, of course, but earlier in the year there was a gathering of Comanche chiefs in San Antonio, and they were actually arrested, which turned into a big firefight, and so. Many of the Comanche chiefs were killed, and so in retaliation, the Comanches went and sacked Linville and Victoria's, which is down on the coast, and that was kind of, I want to say, mid 1840, and so in retaliation for that, that's what you were talking about, where John Moore gathered volunteers from the Grange area, and Henry, according to this book, he was a member of that expedition.
A list of them.
Now, I actually, oddly, in this book, the author cites all of his sources, but that particular list, he doesn't cite.
Oh, that's right. I remember.
So I haven't been able to find, and I'll show you the appendix that shows the list. So it's, but anyway, it's been frustrating. I want to find, he didn't just invent this list, but. It's not, so it's this one in Appendix D, I'll pass it around. But anyway, Henry Earthman is listed, but again, you won't find any source. So it's probably somewhere in the...
This particular book doesn't actually list what happens at Fields and young Henry, but it does list him, as being one of the people that went with Earl Moore. There's another account of Fields and Henry in this book, which is called Indian Depredations in Texas. And so I can pass that around if you want to. They're slightly different when you read them. And so, you just have to figure that it's close. You know about what happened.
I bought a copy of that Indian depredation off of Amazon. It was a reprint. It's a reprint, but it's it was cheap. It was like $20, well, you hear the story of Henry Earthman again, but it's a slightly different version, and then lots of other similar attacks.
So, in 1838, and this is how I knew when they came to Texas. In January 1838, here in Fayette County, Henry Earthman put in a claim for 1 league and 1 labor of land that was entitled to residents of the Republic at that time. And it says in it that he immigrated in November 1835. So that's how we. Now this came from the General Land Office website. So you can.
So this describes the original, call it.
Well, that is just list him among others making claims. And it says that's what he's basing his claim on, and it usually gives a witness to his claim. And so that's just the beginning of that. And then right here, he also, in 1838, put in a claim for 1/3 of a league for James. You remember James is listed on there as one of the older sons, but there's no death date listed for him. Well, this says in January 1838 that James is deceased. Now, I don't think that they were able to get this property for James because I couldn't find anything further. But they did put in a request for it in January 1838.
Is there any way to, if you were to have the amount of information that's in these really old documents, is there any way to sort of go and identify where that exact plot of land is today?
At a title office, that like if you have some of the surveyors here, that kind of thing, they can do that. This is actually, and I copied the whole thing from the General Land Office. This is Henry Earthman's land grant. And like I said, he had applied for it earlier on and in 1838, and he did not actually patent it until later on. I think it was 1847, something like that. But this is the whole paperwork. So basically, just if you were just in the Republic of Texas and you were a young man, you were entitled to property. But if you had a family, you were entitled to more. And but you got a land grant. They'd say, okay, you get a league and labor. But it's out there somewhere. It's up to you to go patent it. And so patenting it is where you actually found available property, had it surveyed, turned it in. So that's what the deal is when I say it wasn't patented until later. And his was given in Gonzales County. Now, Fayette County was formed in the end of December 1837, January 1838, right in there. And but from the best I can tell, he did not live in Gonzales County. He actually lived in Fayette County all that time.
When they went for the land, was there maps available where they could come into town and look and to see who owned what?
I gotta tell you, I don't know the answer to that. I really don't. I have not studied that as well as I could. He would go and he would apply to the land board for the county.
And how much was it? Like an acre for one?
It's oh boy, I should know this. It's like yeah, it's a whole lot. Right.
And then if you had a family, you got more, right?
Yes, and evidently he just flipped his. He actually patented it, but then he flipped it. He didn't actually ever live on it.
And that's the term, patent?
Patented is where you survey it out, where you say, okay, it's going to be right here in this spot with these dimensions and like that. That patenting is that one. And then Fields, the other son that was involved in that Indian raid, He had an 1845 land grant, and the reason it would be later is because of their age, because you couldn't get one unless you were, I think it was 21. So he had to be the right age, and his was not patented by himself. It was patented by another man after Fields had died. So that's this thing right here. And like I said, I'm going to give these to y'all so you can, if you want more, a longer look at some of these, certainly have it.
One more question while we're on that topic. So I was perusing the files last night, and one of the census records showed the Earthmans, and it was age 70, 35, 28, 5, 2. So
I think that particular one was 1870 that he's talking about. And I believe he's living with one of his, I think it's his youngest son and maybe a wife that we don't have well documented.
Right.
And then the son's children.
okay.
And Henry's his age is listed as 70, but
It changes.
But he's also listed as 70 in the
1860s,
census record
yeah.
10 years before. So I think he was actually 80 at the time.
Yeah.
Is my guess is he was 80. Because I was looking for where the inconsistency showed up, and it was
Right.
1870 and 1880. He had the same age.
And like I said, I think that his place of birth changes on census records too. You know, they didn't always talk to the person themselves when they were taking the census records. And so there's always, you've got to accept some discrepancy in it. It's just the way it goes.
Well, clearly one of the requirements to be one year, cursive had to be perfect.
Sometimes later on they weren't so good.
But you are right. This I've got. This is the 1870 census, and it says Henry, age 70. We think he's probably 80. Living with John, who was 36. A.L., a female, who's 24, and then 2 children, 5 and 3, both females. So.
And it's listed in one of these family trees. They said that his wife had died in 1870. If that's the case, she should show up on a mortality schedule, but I don't think she does. So I don't know when she died, and there's no markers. The only marker for an Earthman in Fayette County is for a black woman. So there's just, they don't have permanent markers. The Kennedys do, but the Earthmans don't. At least, or they haven't been discovered yet. Let's put it that way.
The two cemeteries that you just uncovered, how were they found?
Property owners cleaning their land. A lot of times it's like a new property owner, just really getting in there and getting interested. And one of them was a new property owner cleaning his land. And then the other one, it was somebody who knew those gravestones were out there and nobody had ever mentioned them to us before. And they just happened to become friends with us up here. And so they finally decided to tell us about them.
So have they actually gone and looked?
Well, so you've got to realize, I'm going to give you an example in Colorado County. Somebody contacted me about 3 weeks ago about a new stone that was uncovered there. It was under this much dirt. And it just so happens he had been cleaning up a cemetery, and he had a friend out there, and they're walking around, and the man stubbed his toe on a stone. And he's like, oh, that's an odd looking rock. And so they started digging, and under this much, the stone was upright under that much dirt. It was weird. So anyway, all kind of weird things happen. But the other one that I was telling you was discovered, it was just in a whole lot of Yopon. It was just, Yopon just. So.
You would think that the closest cemetery there would be that Waldeck Cemetery.
Well, yes, but the problem is, in the early days, they didn't use those big community cemeteries like that. They just, put them wherever was close and easy,
Family cemetery.
And so, yeah, they're just everywhere. Like I said, over 300. So in 1839, I thought this was kind of interesting. This is the first notice I could find where Henry is paying taxes in Fayette County. And all he's paying taxes on is a Negro boy worth $600 and he had to pay $1 in poll tax. So his taxes in 1839 were $4. That was in Fayette County. And then in January 1840, he bought, remember we talked about Colonel John Henry Moore? He bought from John Henry Moore 200 acres, and it's out in that Methodist area. So anyway, here's the deed for that.
John H. Moore is the founder of the Grange, is he not?
He is.
No,
He is
where
one of
was
them.
this?
This is here. No, it's here.
No, yes, well, that was the value assigned to it. So, don't ask me how they assign people values, I don't know. But he was, that boy had that value. Grown men could be over $1,000.
And the one Earthman marker, is it a
Mhm.
woman or a man?
It's a woman. I believe her name is Hattie Earthman. She's in a black church cemetery on the way to Warda, or close to Warda. And then in 1840, he's paying taxes in Gonzales. And I thought this was interesting because it says he's paying taxes on land not patented. So now you know what patented means.
So even though you're paying taxes, you technically
No, he actually owned that land. We just don't know where it is. It's bizarre. I need to study that more myself. There's so much to study. And then in 1841, he shows up in Fayette County taxes, and that one shows that he owns that 200 acres. And it really doesn't show that he owns a whole lot else. Let me see where he's down here. Earthman, yeah. Yeah, he owned, and then also there's some, it shows William on there too. But anyway, there's his taxes, and then the next year we've got taxes in Fayette County. And this is, we actually.
Is the boy still on that one?
So then on that one, they started doing it a little bit different. There's column headings, and so there's column headings for slaves.
Yeah.
And so there'll be just a tick, whether it's 1 or 2 or that kind of thing. And then this particular one, it just lists how many taxes he paid. This one we have the actual list here in the archives. I just couldn't put my hands on it.
That's the one that I was.
That's the one it's here.
So do you want to take this one
And then what I wanted to show you too, so in 1849 in Gonzales, at that point, his land is patented, and it's in the Earthman League, and so that's why I did this one, copied this one.
And is there any way to see how much land that was? Whether
I think it's listed on there. Yeah. And okay, so I don't know if y'all know about census records. Census records, we just did that in 2020. Okay, so before 1850, what they would do is they'd list the head of the household, and then they would just say, there's this many adult females, there's this many child women, there are different people, different ages, but they didn't list them by name. So, and in 1840, Texas wasn't part of the United States. So we don't have a United States Census until 1850. And so this is the very first one, and it shows H. Earthman, his wife, Bathsheba, Fields, Isaac, and William at home. And then, I don't know if those of you who've done some research, usually there's not just a census of people, but there's also a census of back then they had slave censuses too. And so this one was H. Earthman, and he had 3 slaves. He had a 24-year-old male, a 16-year-old female, and a 1-year-old female. And she was a mulatto. And then this was his ag census, also for 1850. And it talks about, how many horses he had, how many cattle he had, blah, 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 you know, it's like that. But I think it has how many acres he's got under cultivation and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's really true. So, the family tree I was looking at online did not have a death date for Fields. Well, I found his obituary. So this was in the local Texas Monument. It was published right here at LaGrange. And it says died on Saturday the 23rd instant. And this was in August of 1851. He died of apoplexy. Now, apoplexy is like a stroke, honestly. And so it says, Mr. Fields Earthman, the son of Mr. Henry Earthman of this county, aged 31 years. Mr. Fields Earthman had been blind for several years, the result of severe cerebral inflammation. So that's the reason they gave for his blindness. He was a good and pious Christian, and at his death was a member of the Baptist Church.
So maybe he actually got hit by the Indians.
Right. It was probably I started thinking maybe he experienced some real trauma, physical trauma from in a way.
But going blind from physical trauma.
Going blind from a scary horse ride
No.
is that's not the story.
But I suspect he got hit, right?
Well, they say he was reaching for reins and stuff like that. So yeah. And again, I'm going through with what documents we have to tell their story because we don't have a nice written history of them. But in 1858, Henry and Bathsheba gave their daughter, Mary, who had married Augustus Kennedy, they gave them an 8-year-old Negro girl named Maria. And that's the document for this. And your cousin here is the one that found that in the deed records.
Yeah, we'll see it later. Whoever wants to go to the clerk, the original entry of that is in a book in the clerk's office. And
then we have this file. This is a picture of Mary Earthman and her husband, Augustus Kennedy.
What about Polly?
That is Paul.
Mary and Polly, the same person. I don't know why, but Polly is kind of a common nickname for Mary. In 1860, they're in the census, and let's see.
Augustus Kennedy.
Oh yeah,
A.S. Kennedy.
this is weird because I couldn't figure this one out.
Polly is Henry's daughter.
In 1860, Henry and his wife Betty, with Bathsheba Betty, they're listed together just by themselves at Oso in Fayette County. Oso is like an extinct community near Flatonia. Flatonia is like the opposite end of the county from where all this other stuff is going on. I don't know why they were in Oso. I don't know. Maybe they followed his child that direction or something. I don't know.
Right, and that one you're talking about is Henry and Betty, and he's listed as 70 years old, and North Carolina is where he was said to have been born. So, like I was saying, 10 years later, we see he's also listed as 70 years old in the census. And this one is the one that's probably correct.
So Henry the father was married to Polly.
No, Henry the father is married to Bathsheba or Betty.
Okay.
And his daughter is Polly. She was married to A.S. Kennedy.
Okay.
And they were married separately.
And I don't know if you remember, but I showed you the 1850 slave schedule where it showed the Earthmans and 3 slaves. In 1860, they're not listed anymore as having slaves. But remember Maria that was gifted to their daughter? She's now 10 and a property of A.S. Kennedy. But she's the only one that the Kennedys have.
But she was given, then there was.
She was given from the Earthmans to the Kennedys, yeah.
But then they gave their daughter-in-law somebody.
Well, that's a different gift deed. So
Oh, that's
Isaac
from
Young.
property. I didn't.
There's a matching gift deed. Do you have? Were you
I
getting
didn't. Get
It's
that.
the same. So in the same book, the same instance, they give Maria as a gift to their daughter Polly, and they give Alan, who's I want to say 6 years old at the time in 1858, as a gift to their son Isaac Young and the daughter-in-law,
His wife,
Sarah.
yeah.
Okay, you see, I should have, that's what the problem is, I didn't look at the, that's why I didn't get that one. I need to do that. We're trying to, things like those kind of records, those come in handy to people searching their Black heritage. It is really, really tough to search your Black heritage. And so things like those gifties, those really work out well for a lot
Well,
of
and
them,
you'll
that
see,
helps them.
and the Google Drives up. I did the same research on Ancestry on Alan and Maria, just because I wanted to see what was in there, and I found quite a bit of information about both of them, and it's in that Google Drive, including Maria's burial, her gravestone in the 1930s in Waco, and found census records for her and her daughters. Anyway, more to learn about them.
One side note, I live in Boston now. I was looking up my property, so I looked up Donald Earthman, and then Charlie found another Donald Earthman who was black, but he had passed away. It was an obituary note. So,
Dapper dude, it's a good picture.
yeah, it really was. Yeah. Distinguished black man.
But there's a bunch of Earthmans buried in South Austin, near, like, where, St. Edwards,
Oh, really?
that has a lot of black Earthmans. Which, I'm thinking one of these days in Austin, we go check out that cemetery.
This is just another assessment of property from 1862. And Henry and his son both owned property by then in that Phillips League. And I didn't copy when his son bought that, but he had 109 acres. Henry still had his original 200 that he had bought. That's that. And then in 1867, that's after the Civil War, right? Okay, when Texas left the Union, right? So you were no longer an American citizen if you were part of the Confederacy. So everybody in Texas was supposed to go back and register to vote. They had to take an oath of allegiance to the United States, and they had to register to vote again. And for whatever reason, Henry didn't do it. All I could find on the Earthmans was Isaac. So I think the Kennedys did too, but Isaac is the only one listed. And in here, we use these a lot because they tell you how long you've been in Texas and in the precinct and that kind of thing. And Isaac said at the time that he lived at Winchester and that he had been in Texas for 360 months. Well, it's 30 years, right? And that he had been in the county for the same length of time. And then he'd been in that precinct for only 2 months. So evidently he had just moved to the Winchester area, but they weren't very far away. And then this is that, let's see, what was this now? Oh, this is an ag thing from 1870 for Henry Earthman. And it just listed, you know, how many cattle and that kind of thing he had.
How many? I'm curious.
Let's see. Yeah, maybe put on my glasses again. Let's see, this is the amount of on cow, let's see. Well, I didn't find no sense. Okay, he had 3 horses, 6 cows, 4, I can't read that one, and 15 of whatever that is. I'll have to go back and look at the originals on those.
And that's on the Google Drive.
And so anyway, that I just took it up through the point where Mr. Earthman would have passed away after 1870, passed away sometime in 1872. I looked for an obituary for him. I looked for one for his wife. I couldn't find one for either one of them. Their son, Isaac, ended up being a constable up in the Winchester area. And then also their grandson, who was a Kennedy, he ended up being a constable in that area too. And then when their son-in-law, Kennedy, died, It said the journal regrets to learn that Captain A.S. Kennedy, an old and highly respected citizen of this county, is dead. He died last Saturday in Austin at the residence of W.T. Rowe, his son-in-law. His remains were brought to and interred at Winchester. That W.T. Rowe was a saddle maker. He actually was in Grange for quite a while. And then later, then when his son, I.Y. Kennedy, who had been a constable, died, it said I.Y. Kennedy, he resided in the southern part of the city, and he was in Grange. Died early Thursday morning, age 67. Death followed a stroke of paralysis. Goes on and on. But anyway, it says Mr. Kennedy had many friends. In early life, he had become a peace officer, serving for many years as constable of his precinct and as deputy sheriff in all about 40 years. He was plain, pleasant, agreeable party. Early on, often they didn't make, long obituaries. By the early 1900s, then they started getting real flowery, and it was very nice. So it's just, shame that we can't find them for those others, but we found what we found.
I might have missed something. That we're bringing up the Kennedys a lot. Is there an association?
It's just, well,
The oldest daughter married Augustus Kennedy, and he was
okay.
he had some prominence in the county.
Okay.
And
you got records, a lot of records on the Kennedys?
a lot more records on them than on some of the Earthmans, yeah. And then I just thought this was fun. I made a copy just for your enjoyment. In 1966, Jim Earthman of Houston contacted Mr. Walter Freitag, who was a local historian, and told what he knew about the Earthmans and what kind of, asking for more information and stuff. And he tells his whole story and that kind of thing. And some of it's right, and some of it's not right. But anyway, I just thought it was fun. It's fun to come back and see something that your relative wrote many years. Is it your? Oh, how fun. Well, then here.
He might have been here today.
Okay. So, the last thing.
Let me interject one
Go
thing.
ahead.
So when Jim bought the property, he was telling me the other night in 66, or was it 66 or 65? He had been there a while, and a neighbor came up and said, well, congratulations, it's back in the Earthman family. He goes, what are you talking about? And he bought it from somebody. He had no idea that it was Henry Earthman's.
Oh, how
It's
fun.
not questions, it's not Mariowski's, it was, give me a minute,
Uh-huh.
see all this.
Oh, how fun. No, I just thought maybe it was handed down through the years. I didn't bother to trace the deed. How fun.
But I was curious how he came to acquire it. Was it coincidence? Or
He just loved it out here, and there was some connection to Fayette County. Sissy, do you recall? Yeah, there's some connection
We've always,
to Fayetteville, to Fayetteville.
Yeah. Well, the Round Top area has always been popular with the Houston area, and it's full of Houston people, so maybe that had something to do with it. So then this right here is a file related to the long, sad story of the historical marker search for the Earthman farm. And there was one at one time, and then I don't know what happened to it. It's gone. It was...
The historical marker was gone?
Yeah, the historical marker's gone. I don't know why. And so, don't take offense, okay? From what I can tell, Mr. Earthman applied for it, and it was first in about 71. Yeah, in 71. And so he wanted a historical marker for the place. Well, the problem is there's certain rules you have to follow for historical markers for the place. And evidently he didn't have the research or whatever behind it. And so the local group said, no. Well, evidently, from what I can tell from these records, a state representative somewhere got involved and said, yeah, they deserve one. So they got one.
This was 1971?
Jim was a state rep.
Oh, okay. So So anyway, he was convinced that it was in the historical commission's best interest to go ahead and build a historical marker. So then it's disappeared. I don't know. Maybe you know why it disappeared. I don't know.
Maybe the local community.
I don't know. So, but there's pictures in here, you know, that were submitted along with it at the time. And so then in '96, they decide they're going to replace it. And so then they get this nice note back from the Texas Historical Commission. Your inquiry concerning a replacement for the Earthman Farm historical marker in Fayette County has been referred to me. The State Marker Review Board has ruled that any application for a replacement marker must meet the current criteria for historical markers. Each application for a replacement marker is evaluated according to current guidelines, including evaluation regarding continuing eligibility. And so it says, we will need the following items to bring the file up to current standards. And it lists 8 things. And so evidently nothing happened. And then in 2002, it says, thank you for your letter of December 13th requesting a new building medallion for the Earthman Farm. And anyway, it says, I noted in the file that a similar inquiry was answered by our office in 1996. I am enclosing a copy of that letter as the information it contains still holds true for the current request. And so I guess that's where we are.
We're about due for another request.
Don't confuse us with that.
So anyway, there was a historical marker, and here is what it said.
Oh, Matthews.
And one of our other history books tells something similar along those lines. But anyway, it says, Earthman Farm established 1835 with one-room log cabin as settler's dwelling. In 1841, a party of Indians was alleged to have killed, scalped, and mutilated the body of young Henry Earthman, who was hunting horses with his brother Fields near their home. Fields Earthman took the news of the murder to Rudersville College, 8 miles east, and nearly all the boys at the school spent the ensuing 3 weeks hunting fruitlessly for Indians. So it says the present house was built in 1877. And it was a recorded Texas historic landmark in 1972. But I think, so the problem is the way it was written up more for like the farm itself, and you know, it didn't all match up. There's still ways to get historical markers for a house that old, you know, but it's like when you're trying to get a historical marker for a church. Well, if you're not in the original church building, usually you don't get a marker for the building, you get one for the congregation. There's always like ways around, you know, but you gotta follow the rules. And so, anyway, there was a marker, now there's not. But maybe there will be someday, who knows?
I just got a picture of the marker, because I saw one.
Let's see, I don't know if there's one in here or not.
I just saw one this morning on the telephone.
No, it's on, it was replaced.
You said, it might have been, did you guys, maybe Uncle Jim just got a new one made, I guess.
Yeah. But
He probably got
anyway.
it on eBay.
He just got sick of asking, he's like, I'm just gonna write a check.
Yeah,
I
those
know who to
pictures
call.
are the ones that are in
Ron's
color
fine.
on the Portal of
Okay.
Texas history though.
Those are in color?
There's a wonderful thing online called the Portal of Texas History. We've put all our newspapers on it. That's where I found the monument things, and it has the color photos that were submitted when this application went in.
Oh, wow.
No, I love that. It was written on Russ Haven's. The number is HI 3663. Remember when you had the 2 initials?
Oh, for the phone number?
Phone number. HI 6.
Wow.
So anyway, that is my presentation. It's probably plenty long for you, longer than you wanted, but you get an idea of what we know about them. But when you say Earthman, I always think about the last person killed by Indians in Fayette County.
Wow. Thank you so much.
How do we buy that book?
And then there's how many copies in there?
We've got about 13 or 14 copies of it. So yeah, they're $15 a piece.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. y'all gonna do a field trip later, right?
Well, we were gonna go, so we are gonna go, so Sissy and Mark are renovating
That's
that house, so we're gonna go see that. We were gonna go after this and maybe go to the clerk's office to see the original gift deeds. But, you know, this is a much more comfortable setting to have this conversation.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of history in Fayette County. It was one of the more populated counties early on. And I think at one point we were the 8th most populous or something like that.
And was that
In Texas.
Was that due to the railroad coming through?
No, it was actually, well, I'm trying to think when it was exactly. It was about that time, but we were more populous early on. We were just sort of on this route, you know. We were on the edge of the Stephen F. Austin's colony, and we just kind of always were more popular.
Did you ever come across in that book about the Comanche raid? It talked about how Colonel Moore, you know, collected volunteers from the Grange area, and it sounded like they were, you know, putting up not advertisements, but, you know, stuff printed maybe in newspapers. Is there anything like I was never able to find anything about that expedition or recruiting
Other than
volunteers?
that list, other than what's in that book.
Other than what's written in that book, exactly.
Yeah. You know, I'm just really not sure how they did that.
But you don't have anything that you recall seeing in the archives?
No, if I think about it though, I'll let you know. I really don't. Well, yeah, that's my problem, and half the time.
Eyesight would be gone.
Well, and a lot of times what I'm dealing with is more like 1900s, and so it's the earlier you get, the tougher it is by far. And but we have a lot of Czech and German immigrants here. I mean, just a whole lot. And so I do speak a little bit of German, which comes in handy. I don't speak any Czech, but I'm having to, you know, learn different traditions and things like that.
Yeah.
Well, I started out like he did, just interested in my own family, and then I sort of wanted, well, I guess somebody early on told me you really need to know what was going on around your family, you know, and so I just started picking it up.
So you're self-trained, you're not.
I am a high school math teacher is what I am. I have a master's degree in secondary education. So, but you know, really being a teacher, that helps you, you know, explain to people stuff things, so.
I'm sorry, I went ahead and carried those folders over here. There was a few original
Oh,
documents
yeah, you wanted to
that I
see
kind
them,
of,
yeah.
I just think there's some, there was one I think that was,
Let's go.
actually had Henry Earthman's signature perhaps.
This one right here, oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah, this is fun. Let's see, when's the date on? Okay, this is 1857. This had to do, and I saw numerous postings of this in the newspaper. It's like if you found a horse, you had to post in the newspaper that you found this horse, and you had to describe the horse. Well, if nobody claimed the horse and could prove it was theirs, eventually you could have the horse. And so anyway, basically that's what this is. It has to do with the horse he had posted. But that's his signature, absolutely, right there. So I'm not going here. You hold on to it, don't let go of it.
So I've got a question regarding one of the families over here moved to Shiner temporarily, and they came back. Was Shiner part of the route with the Czechs? Because of my
There's a whole lot of them down there. A lot of people in Lavaca County moved there from Fayette County. It's just, I don't know, you know, land was cheaper that direction. You know, it's like they kind of sold a lot of it here and they moved on that direction.
Interesting. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.